The cage was never locked for many years. Across the cold and quiet galaxies far from Earth, humans were known not as explorers, not as warriors, and not even as thinkers. They were known only as prey, weak creatures stolen from their home world by powerful alien collectors who saw them as nothing more than living trophies to place in cages, to study, or to trade between empires as entertainment. In a distant part of space known as the Grith Zone, deep inside a hidden Blackstone facility floating above a broken red planet, a group of human captives sat in a glowing blue cell, their skin pale from artificial light, their bodies weak from years of isolation, and their minds slowly crumbling. Under the silence that came when hope had died long ago, they had been taken from Earth decades ago, one from a forest, one from a war zone, one from a quiet farm, and one, the last one, from a deep underground base that no alien had ever understood. But none of the aliens who collected them knew that this last one was different. The guards who worked for the Varnic Empire, a brutal race of reptilian beings with armored skin and cruel minds, believed that humans were soft, easy to control, and too emotional to ever become dangerous, so they treated their captives like pets without teeth, feeding them from tubes, ignoring their screams, and laughing when one broke down crying in the night. But in the shadows of the cell, the last human sat, still not broken, not hopeless, and not afraid. Name was Elias Cade, and unlike the others, he had not been taken. He had let them take him. Elias had been silent for 12 years. He never spoke to the guards. He never argued with the others. He only watched every door, every sensor, every shift change, every code whispered between the guards, and every weak point in the energy bars of the cell that blinked for exactly 1 second. Every 9 hours when the backup systems recharged, the other humans thought he had lost his mind, or that maybe he had died inside long ago. But the truth was, Elias was doing what no other human had done in this place. He was waiting. One of the older humans, Mira, whispered to him one night, "You'll die in this cage like the rest of us. There's no way out." But Elias didn't answer her, not with words. He simply smiled. And then one day, everything changed. It was supposed to be a normal inspection, one of the routine checkups where the Varnic guards walked the halls with their scanning tools, grunting and laughing in their strange language, throwing food packs through the bars like feeding wild animals. But on this day, one of the guards didn't return. The shift passed. No one said anything. The alien control systems showed no alerts. No alerts were triggered. But the next morning, a different guard was missing, and in the command room, silent red lights blinked. On screens no one had ever noticed before, internal access codes had been copied, door timers adjusted, and heat signals rerouted. They thought it was a system bug. They were wrong. Down in the prisoner bay, Elias opened his eyes. For the first time in years, he stood. The others watched him in silence, confused and frightened, because something about him had changed. His movements were precise, smooth, and silent, like a hunter walking through deep grass. Like he wasn't a prisoner at all, but a predator wearing the skin of prey. He turned toward the energy bars and stared at them. Then, he spoke one word, "Now," and when the lights blinked, he vanished. In that 1-second flicker, he moved not like a man, but like something that had been trained, built, and reshaped by forces not even the Varnac understood. When the guards returned minutes later, the cage was empty. All of it. No humans. No signs of struggle, just silence. And a single message carved into the floor using a guard's clawed finger. "You thought we were prey. You forgot we can hunt." From that moment on, the entire Varnac station locked down. Every corridor searched, every air vent sealed, every alarm triggered. But it was already too late. Elias had escaped, and he wasn't running. He was hunting. The Varnac station had never known fear. Built into the side of a dying red moon, hidden by thick clouds of magnetic dust, and protected by thousands of metal drones and biolocked gates, the fortress had always been a place where the powerful felt safe and the weak were forgotten until now. When the alarms first sounded, after Elias vanished, the Varnic guards laughed, thinking it was just a malfunction, or maybe another prisoner trying to hide inside a wall panel. But as the minutes turned into hours, and the security teams searched every hallway, crawl space, and storage vent without finding a single trace, their smiles slowly faded. The humans were gone, not dead, not screaming, just gone. And the message scratched into the floor made them uneasy in a way they couldn't explain. as if something inside their cold, scaled skin remembered what it meant to be hunted. Commander Thrask, leader of the station, stood in the main control room, his thick claws tapping against the metal table as he watched security footage on every screen, footage that showed blinking lights, empty cages, and shadowy blurs moving through places no prisoner had ever reached before. He growled in frustration. No human is this fast. No human is this smart. This is not possible. But one of his tech officers, a thin gray-skinned creature named Vel, spoke softly. Commander, this one is not like the others. This one had training, purpose. He wanted to be taken. Thrask's eyes narrowed. Why would prey walk into the jaws of the beast? Vel answered, to kill it from the inside. Far below the control center, in the vents above the living quarters, Elias crawled silently, his body pressed flat, his breath slow and controlled, and his eyes sharp as a knife. He had memorized the layout of the station from observation alone, and now he was using that knowledge to move through the heart of the enemy. Unseen, unheard, and unstoppable. He wasn't looking for an escape pod. He wasn't looking for rescue. He was looking for something else. A room he had seen once, years ago, when the guards dragged one of the humans through it, a room filled with strange lights, deep hums, and black machines that glowed like dying stars. The lab, that's where they broke humans. That's where they pulled memories out with wires. That's where they tortured people with questions until minds cracked like glass under pressure. Elias was going there not to destroy IT, but to wake something up. Back in the control center, Commander Thrask had ordered all humans to be found alive, but what the guards began to discover in the next few hours made even him pause. In Sector 9, a guard was found hanging upside down, unconscious, with a sharp cable tied around his throat like a message. In Sector 12, the wall screens flickered and displayed human war symbols in red symbols. The Varnak couldn't read, but that made their older warriors step back in silence. And in the hangar bay, 2 drone operators vanished without a sound, their weapons left untouched on the floor, and their tracking chips found melted inside a pile of cooling wires. Elias never used a gun. He didn't need one. His weapon was silence. His armor was patience. His power came from something the Varnak never understood: pain without fear, and rage without sound. Inside the lab, Elias moved like a shadow, slipping past the red lights, disabling sensors, and finding the central core, a black cube covered in alien symbols that pulsed like a living heart. He reached out and touched it. For a moment, it resisted him, but then it opened, and what he saw inside made him understand everything. The Varnak weren't just collecting humans, they were studying Earth, its languages, its weapons, its wars, its fears. They were preparing for something. They weren't just hunters, they were planners, and the cage wasn't built to keep humans in. It was built to learn how to break them faster. Elias stared at the files glowing in the air, around him millions of lines of data, videos, sounds, experiments, and something inside him went cold. The war hadn't started yet, Earth didn't know, but these monsters were getting ready. And now, Elias understood his mission wasn't revenge, it was warning. He had to send a signal. He had to tell Earth what was coming. But first, he had to finish the hunt. The Varnak station, once proud and feared across galaxies for its cold silence and perfect order, had become something different, now something tense, unpredictable, and haunted, as if the walls themselves no longer trusted the guards walking through them. Commander Thrask had ordered every drone activated, every access code changed, and every room scanned, but still, no one could catch the escaped human, and what made the situation worse was that none of the other humans could be found either, as if they had disappeared into the walls, leaving only fear behind. Down in the lab, Elias stood in the center of the alien core room, his hand still near the black data cube, the air around him flickering with floating symbols, glowing warnings, and deep alien sounds that seemed to echo from inside the walls like a voice from something older than time. The more he studied the files, the more the truth unfolded. The Varnak had been watching Earth for decades, not just studying humans they captured, but intercepting signals, analyzing culture, and learning every weakness from every war, every invention, and every political collapse. They knew what scared humans. They knew how they thought, and they planned to break Earth from the inside by copying the worst of humanity and sending it back through false broadcasts, through hacked satellites, through cloned messages that would confuse and divide Earth's nations until no one trusted anyone. But Elias had seen through their plan, and now he would become the signal. He moved through the lab like a shadow, placing small pieces of stolen equipment along the walls, things he had taken from fallen drones, energy relays, and broken panels, each piece placed perfectly, connected by a silent frequency only he could hear in the implant buried deep in his skull. Something even the Varnock scanners couldn't detect, because Elias had never been just a soldier. He had been built for infiltration. He had been part of a program that Earth buried deep underground, known only by a number, Unit 9R. The Varnock thought they had captured a human. They had actually captured a weapon. While Elias prepared his trap, the Varnock guards grew restless. 3 had vanished without a fight. 1 was found locked inside his own armor, screaming, with his claws broken, as if he had tried to escape something inside his own helmet. Another tried to flee the station in a personnel pod, but it exploded exactly 7 seconds after takeoff. Right outside the main shield wall, the pieces crashing back into the red sands of the dead moon like burning metal snow. In the control room, Commander Thrask shouted at his officers, "This is not one human. This is sabotage. This is infiltration. How is he everywhere at once?" Vel, the quiet tech officer, answered slowly, "He's not everywhere, Commander. He's making it look like he is." Thrask growled, "Then what is he doing?" Vel hesitated before speaking again. "He's building something, using our own tech, using our mistakes." Back in the dark hallways near the engine room, Elias had finished placing the last relay node. When it activated, the entire station's communication grid would turn against itself, rerouting internal power and sending a data burst toward Earth's last known satellite path. A message filled with everything Elias had discovered, but the signal would only go through if he survived long enough to reach the central control spike, the heart of the Varnock system. As he moved toward it, silent and calm, a sudden hiss filled the hallway. Gas. Poison. The Varnock had triggered an emergency defense. Elias dropped low, pressing a mask made from a broken drone's filter over his mouth, breathing slowly, holding still as the thick green mist passed over him like a wave. Footsteps followed. For guards. Big. Heavy. Armed. They moved fast, weapons raised, but Elias was faster. He waited in the mist until their shapes passed, then struck. 1 blade from above, 1 choke from behind. 1 dropped silently as the last spun to lateralus tackled him into the wall, slamming his helmet against the steel until the red lights in the eyes flickered and died. All 4 dropped without a sound. Elias didn't wait. He moved on. The control spike was close now. Only 1 hallway remained, but that hallway was filled with something new: motion sensors, drones, and a deep, glowing red light that pulsed with every step, like a heartbeat waiting to explode. It was a trap, but Elias smiled. He liked traps, because when you're the one they think is prey, the best way to win is to walk straight into the jaws and break them from the inside. He took 1 breath, then he ran. The Varnock had always believed in strength through fear: crush the weak, dominate the strong, and keep control by reminding everyone that no one escaped their power. But now, inside their own station, surrounded by alarms and shadows, they were starting to feel something they had never truly understood before: fear without a face. Elias had become a ghost, a whisper in the vents, a movement on the edge of a screen that vanished before the camera could focus. And with every moment that passed, the station felt more like a hunted nest than a fortress. And the one thing the Varnock had never prepared for was to be hunted on their own ground. Inside the high-security corridor that led to the control spike, the central tower of the station's entire system, Elias moved like a shadow given purpose, weaving between lasers, disabling drones with makeshift electric pulses, and timing every step with perfect calculation. His eyes locked on the path ahead as red lights flashed across the steel walls like warning signs sent from a dying god. He had only 1 chance. Once he reached the control spike, he could trigger a forced data stream through the satellite echo network and send the truth back to Earth, proof of the Varnock plan. The labs, the mind control signals, the experiments, and a warning that the war had already begun in secret. But someone was waiting for him inside the tower chamber. Surrounded by armored guards and glowing alien tech, Commander Thrask stood with his weapon drawn, a long double-bladed staff charged with white plasma, his heavy armor hissing with energy as he waited, not with fear, but with pride and fury. He had not climbed the ranks of the Varnak Empire by hiding from danger. He wanted Elias to come. He wanted to crush this human himself, and prove that prey could never become predator. As Elias entered the room, the doors sealed behind him with a sharp metallic snap. There was no way out, no more shadows, no more vents, just two beings, staring at each other across the glowing floor, one shaped by war, and one shaped by survival. "You are clever," Thrask growled, his deep voice vibrating through the walls. "You killed my guards, you made my station bleed, but you are still just a man." Elias said nothing. He slowly pulled a thin black cable from around his wriststaff, coil of data and energy, twisted with stolen code and human-made tech, and plugged it into the control spike behind him. The lights flickered. The message began uploading. Thrask's eyes widened. No, he charged forward, staff spinning. Elias dodged, not with speed, not with purpose. Every move was planned. Every block was silent. Every strike was aimed to injure, not kill. Because Elias knew he didn't need to win the fight. He just needed to survive long enough for the upload to complete. But Thrask was strong, faster than expected. The plasma blade cut through the air, searing sparks across the floor as Elias jumped back, blood dripping from a shallow cut on his arm, the heat singing the edge of his shirt as he moved behind the spike. Thrask laughed. "You bleed. You feel pain. You will scream." Elias smiled. "I've already screamed," he said calmly. "Years ago, when your kind took my friends, when you tortured them, when you broke their minds in your lab." Thrask roared, swinging his blade again. This time Elias caught it barehanded, a hidden glove, wrapped in Varnak skin and lined with stolen heat. Gel absorbed the shock as he twisted the weapon and flipped Thrask off balance, sending the commander crashing into the wall. The message reached 74%. Elias ducked as a blast of plasma shot from a side cannon, rolling beneath it and tossing a stolen shock grenade toward the ceiling panel where backup systems were wired. The explosion was small but enough. The lights died for 1 second, just like the old prison cell, and in that second, Elias moved behind Thrask. One jab, one twist, a knife into the armor gap at the neck. "Not to kill. Too slow." Ask dropped to one knee, gasping, snarling, trying to stand. The message hit 91%. "You think you've won?" Thrask spat. Elias looked at him, calm, steady. "No, I've only started." Thrask roared and lunged again. Elias sidestepped and slammed his elbow into the control spike, finishing the upload manually. A final jolt of energy pulsed through the tower. The screen lit up green. Transmission sent to Earth. 2 satellites. 2 old allies watching the stars. Every secret, every experiment, every warning, all of it. Out. Ask froze, staring at the screen. Elias leaned close and whispered the last thing the commander would hear. "Now we hunt you." Far from the cold stars and silent moons, beyond the shadows of forgotten planets and ancient alien stations, the Earth still spun quietly in the blue of space, unaware that the greatest danger it had ever faced was already hunting its people. From the dark corners of the galaxy and, for most of the world, life was still normal, but deep under the Rocky Mountains, buried inside a secret bunker built during the final days of the last Great War, a quiet console beeped once, then twice, then began to scream with warning lights as an encrypted transmission reached its sensors, a signal that hadn't been heard in 10 years, and one that only a few people on Earth even remembered. It came from Unit 9, and the one man responsible for that forgotten human infiltration program, General Marcus Hale, was already in the room before the alarm finished its second round. He was older now, scar across one cheek, eyes tired but sharp like knives that had never stopped being used. And as he stared at the screen showing Ilias's message, he didn't blink. He had always believed the Varnak weren't finished. He had always feared one day they would come back. But even he hadn't expected that Elias, the quiet one, the smallest one, the one who rarely spoke during training, would be the one to survive this long. The transmission played images of Varnak labs, footage of mind experiments, voice files in alien languages, translated into broken, painful English. Earth. Test. Complete species crack under loss, ready to invade. Signal prepares weakness, and then Ilias's voice. "This is 9R. They're coming. Not with ships, not yet. First with division, with noise. They want Earth to fall before they land. Stop them, or be broken." The message ended. The room stayed silent. No one moved. Then General Hale turned to his communication officer. Wake every deep cell, tell the outer stations, signal the Mars colonies, and activate Black Flag Protocol. The officer paused. That hasn't been used since. Hale's voice cut like stone. This isn't training. This is war. Back in the Varnock station, Elias stood over the weakened commander, blood on his hands, cuts on his arms, and pain in every muscle. But he didn't care because the message was sent, and Earth was no longer blind. Thrask was still alive, coughing, armor cracked, pride shattered, and eyes full of rage. You are alone. The alien growled. Elias didn't speak. He simply tapped his wrist device, and from it, a small red light blinked once. A beacon, a signal to others. Not just humans, other prisoners, other survivors. For years, the Varnock had captured dozens of species, tortured hundreds, silenced thousands, and now Elias was sending a message, not just to Earth, but to every enemy the Varnock ever made. They were no longer prey, they were no longer afraid, and one by one they would rise. In the days that followed, strange things happened across the galaxy. A mining colony in the Edge systems vanished after its slaves turned on their Varnock masters, using stolen equipment. A secret Varnock lab on a jungle moon went dark, its last transmission a scream of panic, and something that sounded like fire. And on a deep space trading ship, a Varnock ambassador was found locked in his own cryochamber, with the words "we remember" burned into the glass. The Empire had cracked open something they didn't understand. They thought they were the only predators, but they had taught the prey how to hunt. On Earth, cities didn't panic, leaders didn't tell the people. Not yet, but in the underground bunkers and higher-bit defense rings, humans were no longer sitting quietly. They were watching, preparing, learning, and deep inside a secret room, General Hale pulled open an old file. Inside it were the names of the others, the rest of Unit 9, some still alive, some missing, some maybe turned. He whispered to himself, "We didn't bury the wolves, we just let them sleep." And now, they were waking up, because one of them had sent the call, and that meant one thing: the hunt was on. The Varnock Empire had ruled in silence for hundreds of years, not because they were the strongest species in the galaxy, but because they were the most careful, always watching, always striking before anyone could fight back, always making sure no rebellion ever lived long enough to tell a story. But now, something was changing. Whispers were moving through the stars. Old allies who had gone silent were speaking again. Hidden species that once bowed in fear were standing, tall, and at the center of it all was a single human, whose name the Varnock still didn't speak, as if saying it would give him more power. But power was no longer something they controlled. Elias, once prisoner, now predator, had disappeared from the Varnock station after his final message sent ripples across 1,000 systems. And although Commander Thrask survived the encounter, his reputation did not, because nothing spread faster through the Varnock ranks than fear disguised as silence. Back on Earth, in the underground bunker where General Hale now lived in full alert mode, a secret meeting was underway. Sitting across from him were three individuals. One was a tall woman with a mechanical arm, once leader of Earth's failed Mars resistance. One was a scientist who had studied alien transmissions for 20 years without a single real answer. And the last was not human. He was called Raython, tall and thin, with silver skin and black eyes. A former Varnock slave from the Rin Delta system who had escaped years ago and now worked with Earth in secret. General Hale stood at the table, holding a device that played Ilias's transmission again. "This changes everything," Hale said. "Not just for Earth, for every species that's been hiding." Raython leaned forward. His voice was calm but sharp. The Varnock never feared weapons. They feared unity. That one day, the hunted would speak to each other. The woman nodded. "And now they have." The scientist tapped the screen, pulling up maps of energy spikes across deep space. "These aren't just attacks," he said. "They're signals-controlled detonations like beacons. Someone's waking up old machines." General Hale looked around the room. Elias didn't just escape. He started a fire, and it's spreading. Meanwhile, in the cold dark of deep space, far beyond the outer colonies, Elias moved through the wreckage of an old Varnock ship, now overgrown with ice and silence. He wasn't alone anymore. 3 others moved with him. 2 humans, and 1 insect-like creature, with 8 eyes and armor-plated skin. All of them had been prisoners once. All of them had been tested, broken, forgotten. Now, they were soldiers of their own cause. They called themselves Ghost, Pack 9, and they had one mission: to make the Varnock afraid of the dark. They didn't fight like armies, they didn't march, they struck from nowhere, disabling stations, freeing prisoners, planting signals, and vanishing again before the Varnock could react. And every time they struck, they left one mark behind, a symbol painted in red, a predator's eye. Watching, waiting. The galaxy began to notice on the planet a Varnock patrol outpost was found empty, its guards gone, its weapons destroyed, and the word "remember" burned into the ground with a plasma torch. In the spaceport of Rack 7, smugglers whispered that a human ship had bypassed Varnock defenses and sent a virus through their fleet, tracker scrambling their maps, blinding their eyes, and making the Empire look blind for the first time. Even the Varnock Council began to argue among themselves. Some said they should strike Earth immediately, others warned that doing so would expose their secret plans across the galaxy. And one voice, old advisors, spoke softly: "Fear used to protect us, now it feeds them." But the most dangerous change of all wasn't happening on Earth or in space, it was happening inside the Varnock themselves. Some of the younger warriors, those who had only heard stories of wars, started questioning their orders. Some refused to torture prisoners, some even left their posts and vanished. It was small at first, but rebellion always starts small. Ilyas knew that. He didn't need to fight an army, he just needed to light the match. And now the fire was growing. In one final scene, far away in a dark system no one visited, Elias and his team stood before an old abandoned Varnock research facility buried in the side of a frozen asteroid. The doors were locked, the alarms were still active, but inside, they knew, were kind of secrets the Varnock buried deep when they were afraid of what they had made. Elias looked at the door, then at his team, ready to open the past. They nodded, he placed a charge. The countdown began, and as the light turned red, they stepped inside. The blast from Elias's charge echoed across the frozen asteroid, breaking through ancient steel and shaking ice from the high cliffs above. As the heavy vault door of the forgotten Varnock facility opened for the first time in nearly 2 decades, slowly, hissing with stale air and trapped energy, revealing the darkness inside, Elias stood still for a moment. He could feel something in the air, not movement, not noise, but a kind of pressure, like memories trapped in the walls, screaming, to be heard without sound. The others in his team, Kara, the Mars sniper, Jun, the Cums hacker, and Sil, the insect-like alien survivor, stood behind him in silence, weapons ready, eyes scanning every shadow. "Lights," Ilya said softly. John tapped his pad. For narrow beams pierced the darkness. The inside of the base was not like the others they had broken into. It was cleaner. Colder, like it had never been abandoned. Only sealed. Walls lined with strange machines, pods filled with dark fluids, screens that flickered with alien code, even after all these years. And in the center of the main chamber, beneath layers of glass and glowing symbols, they saw it, the thing the Varnock had feared even more than human rebellion. A chamber, locked tight. With something inside, not a weapon, not a machine, but a person, a human. Still alive, still floating, still connected to wires and machines that blinked quietly, like a sleeping heartbeat. Kara stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Is that one of us?" Elias nodded slowly. "Yes." Sil scanned the walls, clicking his mandibles in disbelief. "This is not just a lab, this is a vault. They didn't try to destroy this. They tried to hide it." Elias stepped forward and read the alien code on the chamber's edge. The translation was rough, but it said enough. "Project Predator 0 host, cannot be controlled. Mind too resistant, too dangerous, must not be allowed to awaken." Kara blinked. "Predator 0. Jun looked at Elias. What did they do to him? Elias stared at the figure in the chamber, watching as the human floated quietly, eyes closed, muscles larger than normal, veins laced with faint glowing lines, his body enhanced, but not just with strength, with rage. "They tried to create a perfect weapon," Elias said, his voice low, a human mixed with Varnock tech, "but it backfired. He wouldn't obey, so they locked him away." Jun stepped back nervously. "And now we're waking him up." Elias looked around the room. "This war isn't ending. It's just beginning. If we want to win, we need the one thing they couldn't control." He tapped the chamber. The light turned from red to green. The glass began to open, gas hissed out. The figure stirred, eyes opened, bright gold, glowing faintly, not scared, not confused, just angry. The man stepped forward, stumbling once, then catching himself, like a machine remembering it had a body. He looked at Elia's name. He said in a low, sharp voice. Elias hesitated, then answered, Elias Ghost Pack 9. The figure nodded once. Predator 0, he replied. Last memory, pain, then silence. Till tilted his head. Do you remember what they did to you? The man looked down at his hands, then clenched them into fists. I remember everything. Elias stared at him, not with fear but with understanding. This was not a soldier, not a hero, but a weapon forged in pain and locked away because the Varnok were too afraid of what he could become. And now, he was free. Later that night, as Ghost Pack 9 escaped the base with Predator 0 walking silently beside them, a new message was sent from their stolen transmitter, coded fast, sent across the stars in one simple line. The first Predator has returned. Across the galaxy, old slaves stood taller, silent rebels gripped their weapons tighter, and in the highest room of the Varnak War Council, alarms began to scream. One commander stood, trembling slightly. He was supposed to be gone, she whispered. Another turned to her, his voice shaking. He's not gone, he's angry. And far from them, on a quiet cliff overlooking space, Elias stood beside Predator 0, as stars blinked above them like watching eyes. This time, Elias said, we strike first. Predator 0 said nothing. He just smiled.